Hi, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Agency Acceleration Series. My name is Chip House. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer here at SharpSpring, and I'm super pumped about today's guest, Ann Handley. I'm going to do an intro for her here in a second. And I just wanted to say that if you're new to these series, you picked a good one to start off on. I'm really excited about my chat today. And you'll also have, if you're not new, you've already heard that this kind of content is important for us at SharpSpring to bring to all of you and bring to the world, because we've really built our whole business around agencies. And we think of SharpSpring as a revenue growth platform, really helping all of our agency partners and their customers drive new revenues with new leads, managing leads throughout the funnel, and optimizing their entire funnel, and ultimately driving more revenues. So that's why we're here. And so our guest today is Ann Handley, who many of you are already familiar with, and she's also probably somebody who needs very little introduction. I probably met, as I was chatting with Ann earlier this week, we realized we met maybe 12 years ago at an industry event in person, but it was good to reconnect with her. And she's been at this for a number of years as a digital marketing pioneer and guru. And so she's the chief content officer for her own company, Marketing Profs, and she specializes in training marketers worldwide through online and in-person education programs. I also had remembered that she's the co-founder and former president at ClickZ, which is definitely a firm that I did some advertising with maybe 15, 20 years ago. And one of the first movers in the digital marketing space in terms of content. And she's now also the author of her twice monthly email, Anarchy, and Ann and I are going to talk a little bit about that. And we may have a special guest here to her tiny house. And as you can see from Ann's picture there, she is the queen of authentic content. And hopefully we'll have a special guest, her little dog, August, show up. So with that, Ann, why don't you join me here on screen? Oh, actually, one more thing. So as a participant here today, you can get a signed copy of Ann's book. And all you need to do is click on the link that we're going to put there in the chat and get a demo of SharpSpring. We'd love to show you the platform, and you can get your very own copy of this book that Ann wrote with tons of great tips for content marketers everywhere. So, Ann.
Hello, how are you?
I'm great, how are you?
Good, I am so excited to see so many friends here today. I mean, I knew this would be fun with you, Chip, but holy wow, there's so many great people here. So just seeing lots of friends pop up. Leah here, so hi Leah, hi Sue Ann. Oh my gosh, it's awesome to see all you guys. Cheryl, Jay, Brian, oh my gosh, yeah, so many people. So
that's awesome. So
yeah.
Ann, just can we just start off? I gave a little bit about your background, but talk more about how you got here. How did you get to be the modern Ann Handley that we all know?
Oh, all right, well, so let's go back. How far should we go back? Let's go way back.
As far as you'd like. Yeah.
All right, we're going to go way back to when I was 8 years old. I started a neighborhood newsletter, and because I decided that I needed to report on all of the things going on in my neighborhood, like my next door neighbor got a new mailbox. This is very exciting news. Other neighbors down the street were flouting the leash law. They were letting their dog run loose, and that was just not okay. So I decided that I needed to create content to represent my neighborhood. And when I was 8 years old, I started a newsletter. I wrote it up. My dad took it to his office and he Xeroxed it for me. And I delivered it on my bike into all the mailboxes of all of my neighbors. And that was my foray into content. The reason I'm sharing this with you is because, I've always been hopeless at keeping a diary. Even though I'm a writer, I've always been hopeless at journaling or keeping a diary of any kind. I need an audience to engage with. And even that's what I learned when I was 8 years old, that the only way that I could really get any satisfaction from publishing was to be in service to an audience. And so from those few issues that I published in my neighborhood. It just launched my career. So that was the start of my content marketing career.
That's cool. And you've taken it a long ways for sure,
Yeah.
So the title of this session that many people are here to see is creating ridiculously good content.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems like a appropriate place to start. What does ridiculously good content mean to you, Ann?
So I'm glad you asked that question. So it's funny that we're having this conversation this week because 10 years ago, exactly this week, my friend CC Chapman and I published this book, Content Rules. And you can even see like the original ring of, I don't know, coffee or water or something is on there. Anyway, this book came out 10 years ago. And if you can see by the subtitle, it was how to create killer blogs, podcasts, videos, ebooks, webinars, and more to engage your customers and ignite your business. It is also the longest subtitle in the history of business publishing. I'm just going to call that right now. And so I'm sharing that because in this book, we talked about the fundamentals of good content, and I don't think that they've changed. In this book, we talked about these three things. You can see that, right? So it's content that has clear utility. It's useful to the people you want to connect with. It's inspired in some ways by data or by creativity or both. And it has honest empathy for the person that you are trying to connect with. And that's what is ridiculously good content. And by the way, those multiplication signs between each are intentional because I think you need elements of all three of those things to create ridiculously good content. So yeah, so that was the original formula that we shared in this book, and I still think about that formula when I think about anything that I'm creating. Is it useful? Is it inspired in some way? Is it grounded in data? Is it creative? Could it only come from me? And is it truly useful for the person on the other end? Is it truly useful for the person you're trying to connect with?
Yeah,
I'm hearing it. I was just going to say, I'm hearing a few people say it's an echo. Do you think that's me? Because now I'm worried about that.
I'm not hearing you echo. Are you hearing me echo?
I'm not hearing you echo. No.
Okay. Well, our producer will work on it. So
Okay.
we are in. So to everybody out there, we're in 3 different states right now. So our producer Katrina is down in Florida. I'm in Minnesota. You might be able to see the snow behind me there, and my own dog barking here over to the side. Truman, who's sort of a mid-sized Labradoodle,
Okay.
and I know that maybe we'll see your dog later. So
Yeah.
anyway, so if any of those fantastic things
I guess
causing an echo, I don't know, but
yeah, people are saying that there's no echo. So I saw a few people who said there was an echo. So all right, we're good.
Let's go with it. So like picking up on, bring up your sign again, if you would, that you just
Sure.
showed. Yeah. So
and by the way, this is my own PowerPoint slide, so I created it myself just this morning. So
it's good. You're a better illustrator than I am, and so you live it, as everybody can see. You live kind of what you're preaching for sure. So I think a lot of people see that and they're like, well, Ann is Ann and she's talented, right? But is this something that any business can do, right? Or do they need some sort of special skills to create the kind of content that you do?
I don't think you need special skills. I do think that you need to care. I mean, I know that sounds so fundamental, but by that I mean you truly have to love the product or service or whatever it is that you're marketing. And secondly, you truly have to believe in it and believe in its usefulness to the audience, to your market, to the people who matter. And so I think those two elements are really important. I mean, there's lots of other things that I think are important too, basically having some, empathy for others, in the sense of you can think out not just what is important to you, but what would matter to other people. I think that's very important too. But yeah, I think honestly anybody can do it. The people that I talk to, by the way, who say that they're not good content creators or that they can't do this, very often I find that's a sort of excuse for or maybe not an excuse. It's a it's a sort of shame or frustration that they feel because they don't think that they're good writers. And I don't think you have to be a good writer to be a good content creator. I think it's important to be able to distill your thoughts and your ideas in a way and communicate them in a way that is relevant to the audience. But I don't think you need to be a writer per se. And then the other thing I would say is that, of course, everybody is a writer. So being a good writer isn't about, knowing the rules of grammar. It's really about creating, that sort of empathetic relationship with the person who you're trying to communicate with. It's with some very basic rules. I think anybody can do it too.
And how long do you think it took you to find your voice? Was there a period of like bumps and bruises where you went through?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I'm always finding my voice. My voice changes, all the time, in the sense that, I think it gets better. I can't say it gets worse, because that would be depressing, right? It would be terrible.
Yeah.
But, I do think that my voice, as I have stepped into it more as a creator, it's definitely, I've honed it over time, but that doesn't mean that, you find your voice and then you're done. I think you always are finding your voice. And I think it's true too about, like right now, this world that we find ourselves doing business in, right? We're in the midst of a pandemic, worldwide pandemic. And that's changed my voice too, because I used to create content for professionals, right? I used to think about the people that I would creating content for, and I would think about this formula, and I would think about empathy for professionals. What are they struggling with in their roles, for example? And what the pandemic has taught me and what it's done for me is that it actually makes me think about the mindset of people personally as well. So it's not just what they struggle with professionally, but it's also, how are people feeling? Like, we're all feeling a little uncertain, for example, right? We're all not knowing exactly how this is going to play out. There's just, there's tremendous fear. And so that alone just makes me, it affects my voice, because it makes me that much more empathetic, I think, to the people who I know I'm communicating with. Yes, thank you for calling out those books in color across. It's my rainbow book. Sorry, I'm getting distracted by comments, which I love.
By comments? So. No,
yeah.
I love it. Yeah, we saw that earlier, and as I mentioned, and my wife does it too. And I didn't know that everybody did this, or a lot of people do. So it's very cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, as I said to you before we went live too, it's like, I've realized there's two types of people who believe in the rainbow book formation, and people who just feel like completely allergic to it. So maybe some of you love it and some of you hate it, and that's okay, because you know what, that's what the world is all about.
Yeah. Well, I'm a fan, just so we're clear. So yeah. So empathy, a certain, very important part of that equation, obviously. So, when you are working with clients, right? So when agencies, and when agencies are hired to create great content for clients, really what's the most important success factor, and how do they help capture some of the essence of empathy in your formula?
Yeah, I mean, gosh, I'm trying to think where to start with that. There's a few things that I think about. The first thing, I guess, is it's also a cornerstone of just creating good content overall. But I think it starts with the pitch, right? It's like, frame your products and your services not in terms of your own capabilities, but how those capabilities matter to the client, right? How they matter to others. And that's a trap that I think a lot of us in content marketing fall into too. And I get it, because we feel so capable. We feel so like we're so excited by our own stuff, our own products and services, and who we are, that we forget that, we need to translate it. We need to make that leap and translate it for the client and say, here's what it matters. Here's why it matters to you. And so I think, that's the first thing. It starts with the pitch, right? Of making sure that you are honestly empathetic in that pitch, and that you're going that extra mile and saying, here's why, here's what we can do for you. Here's our capabilities and how they will help you. Which I know sounds super fundamental, and in some ways, maybe too elemental in some ways, but I honestly, my experience working with agencies, it's like, that's just the step that can really make the difference between a mediocre pitch and an outstanding one. So that's the first thing. I think the second thing is to think about whatever program you're putting out there as both short-term and long-term. And again, this is something that I firmly believe in for marketing in general as well. But any short-term action, make sure you've married it with or buddied it up with a long-term growth as well. So don't just think about your content marketing programs that you are, connecting with clients, to clients with, as having just a short-term implication, but really put it in a bigger context. Talk about how that short-term program ultimately drives long-term growth. And the reason why I believe so firmly in that is I do think it forces us as marketers to not just think about the quick wins, right? Think about the easy optimizations, but to think long-term about how do we actually build brand value for our clients.
Yeah, that's great. And like I said before, you live it. It's obvious, and I just recently became aware, to be honest, of your Anarchy newsletter and became a subscriber. But even kind of right from the get-go, the content seems personal and unusual, and I'm just going to read a little quote from the welcome email that I got from you. You say, every 2 weeks, you'll get new writing, useful ideas, fresh links, and high-spirited shenanigans direct from me to you. So I love the high-spirited shenanigans, and yeah, a lot of people don't have, I don't know, the guts to lean into that kind of thing. So email has been successful for you, and you've got lots of subscribers. That's taken off pretty quickly. I was in the email space for years and years, still am really as part of SharpSpring. But you're embracing email. Some people don't as much. Tell me more about why.
Yeah, so just to maybe go back a step before that too, I've been in marketing for, gosh, decades, 20 years, something like that. And the reality is that in marketing, and this is probably true of a lot of industries, but in marketing for sure, the further you get along in your career, the less you touch things, right? The less you're creating something. And I missed that for two reasons. I missed it just creatively because I need to be filled up by that. I need to be feeling like I'm building and growing something and to be working on something creatively. So that's the first thing. But the second reason is because the further you get away from creating things, from touching things, I think the easier it is to lose touch with the tactics and the techniques that work. And for me, my audience is marketers. And so I really wanted an opportunity. I wanted to open up that direct channel with marketers. Now, my business, Marketing Profs, has a newsletter, but that's not just me anymore. Like at one time, it was just me sending out that newsletter. But here, fast forward, 15, 18 years, and it's not just me anymore, right? It's an entire organization. And I lost that one-to-one connection. And so as much as I appreciate, social media and the ability to connect with people there and understand what's on their minds and what matters to marketing and in 2020, I missed that direct access, that direct connection. So 2 years ago, I thought, all right, what am I going to do about that? What can I do? I could start, I don't know, a live video show. I could start a YouTube channel. I could do any number of things, an Instagram feed, like any of those things. But I decided to do an email newsletter, number one, because I'm a writer. And secondly, because I started to rethink how we use the email newsletter. And in my mind, I think the email newsletter is vastly undervalued by most B2B companies, by most companies just in general. I think we tend to use it as a distribution strategy instead of really embracing it as an opportunity to connect directly with one person at one time. And we see examples of this all the time where a lot of brands are just sort of undervaluing that and using it as distribution. And the second reason why I believe so strongly in the email newsletter is because email is the only place where people and not algorithms are deciding what they see, right? And what I mean by that is if I were to do a Facebook something, right, Facebook Live, whatever the case may be, I would be fighting with an algorithm which would decide whether or not my audience would see it. An email newsletter, on the other hand, is something that the people on my list have raised their hand and said, yes, I want to hear from you. And that to me is so unique to email. And so for all of those reasons, I decided to launch my own email newsletter. And it's taught me a whole lot about, what works in marketing. It's taught me a lot about empathy. It's taught me a lot. Like I saw a question fly by here. How do you create a newsletter that has empathy and that has this sort of human element to it? And that's like I've learned a lot from that. And so so that's why, and it's grown tremendously. I'm just around 45,000 subscribers now. I started with 0 2 years ago, and it's just been very, very, very satisfying for me.
Yeah, that's amazing growth. I've seen a few questions come in as well about making dry content, dry B2B content. Like maybe you work for a company that's boring,
Yeah.
so to speak.
Yeah.
I know my
Yeah.
wife does marketing for a healthcare company, for example. And so how do you bring that special sauce, so to speak, to B2B content when the topic is dry?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like when people say that their content is dry or their subject matter is dry, that is such a cop-out, because I think that it's valuable to the right person. It's valuable to somebody, and whether you think of it as dry or not, there's a way to wrap it, to package it, to talk about it that makes it interesting. And whether that means tapping into your own passion for the subject, or whether you need to pull it out of subject matter experts within your own organization or external influencers or subject matter experts, like it doesn't matter. But I think any subject, I firmly believe, can feel special, can feel interesting. So like boring, I just don't buy. I was just thinking about a second ago when I was talking about how most of us undervalue email newsletters. So Marketing Profs, my company, and the Content Marketing Institute just wrapped up our latest B2B content marketing research. And in that research, we asked B2B companies, how many of you are using your email newsletters, are using a email newsletter? And 87% of B2B companies have some kind of email newsletter. But the question I would ask is, like, how many of you are really proud of that email newsletter? How many of you just think about it as a distribution strategy, or how many of you are actually embracing that opportunity? And so, yeah, anyway, that was just a tangent that I was thinking about. But yes, so I firmly believe in the power of the email newsletter, and I firmly believe that B2B companies can do it super well as well. I think the key is to approach it as more letter, less news. So don't focus on the news part of newsletter, focus on the letter part of newsletter. And that, to me, is the first step just to communicating directly, one-to-one, and with some personality.
Yeah, I think that was already helpful for the B2B folks that are dialing in today, because a few of the comments came in, wondering about how to make their B2B content more interesting and to get more engagement. Brooke is asking, do you have any tips for B2B marketers creating content for a service that normally has a 12 to 18-month sales cycle? So it's sort of a similar theme. One of the things you said that really stuck with me is just taking some pride in your communication, B2B newsletter, and moving it to truly something that has a voice and is a letter rather than just a bunch of news.
Yeah.
So I mean, what else would you say what do many companies get wrong? Are they too brief? Are they too long? Are they too HTML, not enough just text now? I mean, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's too corporate centric and not enough empathy for the person on the other end. I have to, by the way, give a shout out to my girl Meg Tripp. I just noticed you're here, Meg. Hi, I love her. So honored that you showed up today.
Hi, Meg.
Anyways, hi Meg. So Kit Meacham's here. Wow, so many friends. I love this. Thank you so much for being here, everyone. Really makes me happy. So, I just got totally derailed. What did you say? Oh, more tips. Yeah, I mean, I think they're too corporate centric. We're talking too much about ourselves instead of thinking about why it matters to the customer. I also think the second reason is fear, because because we feel uncomfortable. I think being vulnerable and being human in this sort of world that we live in. But the reality is, I think we need to be that way. That the more real and the more relatable you are, the stronger your content is. And this applies to email newsletters, but it applies more broadly as well. I mean, I think we're way past the time of saying that businesses have to be buttoned up. You know, we are living in such, like, to use that cliched word, we're living in such unprecedented times. And so really embracing that opportunity that we have to, you know, see like that we are communicating one-to-one, that we're all working out of our home offices for the most part still, and for at least the foreseeable future. That, you know, we are just getting a different sense of people as people, that, you know, not just, again, on the professional side of things, but on the personal side, we have a unique window here into people. And I think that this age of not being honest through your communication is done. And I think that's what gives marketing a bad name, when we try to pretend that something isn't what it is. And so I think it's much more effective to, you know, to be honestly empathetic and to communicate in those terms with that way. And the more you signal that, the more successful you would be. And the fear comes in of like, well, we could never do that because, and my challenge to that is always like, why not? Have you tried it? Have you tried just being personable, not personal, but personable? You know, CB Insights is a they cover the data tech startup space. And Anand Sanwal is the CEO there. I love Anand Sanwal's newsletter. It comes out every single day. It's human, it's personable, it's a little snarky. You know, it's not personal. I don't know anything about Anand, but I do have a relationship with him now in a way that makes me think differently about CB Insights. You know, so that's the kind of bar that I think we should be going for.
That's great. So it's clear that
drink.
Okay, that's good. It's clear that you think, you know, because of the business you're in, that words are important, you know, but a bit of a question for you. What's most important, right? Great words or great pictures?
Yeah, I mean, yes. I think both are important. I mean, yes, I am a words person, but I'm also a visual person. Instagram is my favorite social platform of all time. Even after it was acquired by Facebook, I still really love Instagram. And why do I love it? It's because, you know, the power of that visual is so important. But it's even more powerful when you match that visual with some great copy, with some great words, when you tell a bit of a story around the visual. And so it's the connection of those two things together that I think makes for really, really solid content. You know, I don't think it's a binary question. It's like, are you a words person or are you a visual person? I mean, you know, we are complex creatures. We can hold both inside ourselves and be okay with it, you know? So, and I think it's very true of marketing as well. Yeah, as Meg says here, it's a good marriage for sure.
Yeah. And with the success of Instagram, obviously the world thinks images are important.
Yeah.
You know.
And you're talking to somebody who basically cried when, you know, when video came to Instagram, because I was like, oh, they're totally destroying what made this whole platform special. Like, I took it so personally. I think I published a blog post about it. I was like that devastated. And when I think about it now, it's like, you know, that's kind of cute, right? That I was like that upset about it. But, you know, I have come to realize that, you know, it's okay. It's all like video and still images and video can still work together just as well. So yeah, I mean, I just think it's when you marry the two, that's where the sweet spot is.
Yeah, and you know, that's a good segue, because we talked about it a little bit earlier this week, and you know, I think you had mentioned it took you a while to get comfortable with video as a platform.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, just finding your confidence there, your voice there. But now I think you're leaning in more, and here you are today. You know, so talk more about your journey to embrace video content.
Yeah, you know, I think a big piece of that was I just had to get over it. You know, I was always very hands off, very allergic to video. I felt so stiff whenever a video camera would be on me. I felt like I just turned into like some sort of puppet. You know, I just didn't really. I just couldn't relax. But the shift for me was more of a mindset shift than anything else, and it happened basically in March, early April, when the world shut down. And we, you know, I was previously speaking at 1 to 2 events a week during the high season of spring. That, you know, that whole spring season, was my schedule, which meant that I was on stage in front of people, you know, seeing them, interacting with them, looking at their faces, then getting off stage and having conversations, you know, at cocktail hour or whatever. And I realized that the only way to replicate that in this world where we were all stuck in our little tiny is live video. And so just seeing the interaction of people here, just having this conversation with you, Chip, I think it just changed the game for me. Once I got out of my own head and thought, oh, this isn't about me and feeling weird, it's about connecting with other people. And so, like, think of it this way, you and I could have just done like a Q&A, like a text Q&A, like a blog post or something like that.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's not the same, right? You have to see somebody and have to be able to connect with them. I still miss connecting with people and actually seeing, like, it's awesome to see this interaction here. But even, you know, I miss like I see Kip's comment, for example. I miss like seeing Kip in the audience. Like, that to me is just, I still miss that, but this is about as close as we could get. So to sum up, like, two things, just kind of getting over it and then realizing just the power of live video. I'm kind of all in on that. At the very beginning of this pandemic, my friend Marcus Sheridan, who has been like Mr. Video for such a long time, he reached out to me and he said, hey, what do you think about doing a LinkedIn live show, like you and me? And I was like, oh God, like, why would he ask me? Because, you know, Marcus is like so comfortably so good on video. He's so like, but he was a fantastic tutor in so many ways for me, because just seeing, like, that was like, he was my training wheels in some ways, you know, so I have a lot of gratitude for Marcus just for that as well.
Yeah, well, I've seen Marcus speak live, and he's super comfortable, kind of walking down the aisles and all over the place. So I haven't seen his videos, but I imagine he's great. So picking up on, you know, the question just about social media really quickly, because there's so many questions, by the way. I'm trying to decide which one should I ask Ann now, because I'm not sure we're going to get to all of them. But Heidi here asks, you know, what do you think of social media in general these days? You know, ethics, particularly Facebook. You know, and you know, how do you think about being authentic, having empathy, being effective as a brand in social more broadly too, in addition to Heidi's question?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think well, let me try to think about this. I think it's incumbent on any of us to just be as relentlessly honest as we can as brands. So in some ways, it doesn't matter to me whether you're using Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn Live or, you know, any other video platform or any other social platform to communicate, as long as we sort of start there. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I'm not necessarily a Facebook person. I'm on Facebook very rarely these days, because to me, it's felt overwhelming for a few different reasons. But so what I say, I guess, applies more broadly to social as well. I think it's important to be as honest and as ethical as we possibly can be there. And I think that it is an opportunity to show up with our true selves. And if we as marketers are uncomfortable with that, like, I think we should be helping our executives get there as well. Like at the very beginning of this pandemic, again, going back to April or so, one of the things that really impressed me was the handful of brands who got their executives on camera. You know, they turned the camera around, and rather than just sending out an email saying, you know, we are here for you in these unprecedented times, instead they turned the camera on their executives and had their executives deliver that. I know JetBlue did it. Arne Sorensen, who's the CEO of Marriott, did it. And his video, Arne Sorensen's video from Marriott in particular, was so powerful because of the way in which it was a 5-minute video released on Facebook and on Twitter. And Arne just spoke about, you know, sort of the effects of the early lockdown on the Marriott Corporation, how as a result they had to furlough so many of the Marriott associates. And he got visibly choked up at least 1 or 2 times in the video. And I just thought, God, like, that to me was so powerful. Like, it was just such a powerful moment. The CEO of this massive, you know, international company showing, not just saying it, but showing it. And that to me was, again, like when a second ago when we were talking about the power of video, like, that was another moment for me where I was like, aha, that matters. Like that makes a difference. And so I guess that's what I think about social, the opportunity to truly just show up in a way that is real. And especially for B2B brands, because we see so little of it, the bar is so freaking low. You know, it's like,
Yeah.
we see so little of it that you show up in a way, like even the conversation that you and I are having here, like it feels so real and so different.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And I know we wanted to get here at some point today, and I know that you use a lot of animals in your presentations, you know, and you're an animal fan broadly, and also a puppy fan. I know you have a new puppy. I don't know if he's able to make an appearance sometime, but or not.
Yes. Oh, he's here.
We'd love to see him if you want to get that authentic, Ann. But so you know, talk more about how people can like identify their relatability, you know, imagery. Again, this goes for B2B. I think a lot of brands are maybe uncomfortable with like kind of leaning into fun things, right, in their presentations and get maybe stuck being somewhat stuffy, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, my presentations are usually.
Uh-oh. Hey, Ann, I think we might have lost your audio, or at least I can't hear you. Sorry, 1 second. This hasn't happened before. Can you hear me okay? I'll ask our producer. Katrina, can you hear me okay? Or Kim? You know, okay, great. You know, as I mentioned before, you probably can see the snow behind me, you know, and I know my colleagues here are in Gainesville, Florida, and there's literally a hurricane going overhead at the moment, you know, so if that has anything to do with it, it wouldn't entirely surprise me. And there's Ann. So we'll get a visual. Sometimes visuals can be better than words, and there she is right there. Everybody say hi to August, I think is his name. So August, good to see you. So and would you maybe want to try to exit and then come back in? Would that be okay? Let's try that, and I'll try to, maybe I'll cover a few of the other slides, Katrina, just before Ann comes back. So, you know, next week, you know, speaking of video, next week we're super excited to have Amy Landino, who's a best-selling author and host of award-winning YouTube series, Amy TV. And if you haven't seen Amy, I'd recommend you go to YouTube and look her up and just see kind of the breadth of content that she's producing. And it's really excellent. And so certainly inspirational for from a video standpoint. And after that, we are getting near the end of our series here, at least this year. We've got agency expert, Carl Sakis, you know, he's going to be talking about agency operations, working less and earning more. Who doesn't want to do that? And then Seth Godin talking about the future of agencies. And I love Seth. Seth has, you'll see his fun intro video. He says he's going to bring his own snacks for our presentation, like you have to do in a virtual setting. So excited to have Seth take part. And so hopefully we'll get Ann here back in a second. But we'll show the final slide here too, so then we don't have to do it later. So other than this audio challenge, right, we're hoping that you're enjoying today's session, and we'd love to hear your feedback at sharpspring.com/, Ann Handley survey. And by the way, the feedback that we've gotten from this link is just super helpful for us as we're producing this content. And as I mentioned, we're wanting to do this content again into the new year. So your feedback is super helpful when we're picking guests, providing feedback on the ones we've had already, and planning for additional content. So, Ann, I see you visually. Can we hear you?
I hope so. Can you hear me?
Woohoo! Yes.
Yes.
Excellent.
I don't know what that was. It was like, I was fine on my end, so I'm not sure.
Well, I did shadow puppets there for about 3 minutes. So
isn't that the worst? This is how you know it's live, right? It's like it was a fire drill in the morning, in the middle of a presentation just now. So that's exactly what just happened.
I know. I just remained calm. Thank you for those that solved it, for picking that up. So hopefully that didn't burn too much of our time. I just mentioned we're going to have Amy Landino next, by the way.
Yes.
And I feel like we've talked about video a little bit, but in true form, we wanted to have you kind of respond to a question from our next guest. And so Amy asks, what is an example of ridiculously good video content that brands need to take notice of?
Yeah, gosh, so many. I mean, not to flatter our host here, but I do think that series like this, especially for B2B companies, are so important, because think about like what SharpSpring is doing here. They're creating this series of chats with influencers in the space, and they are engaging with their audiences as much as they are growing their own brand. So yeah, things like this, and it's live, as you just saw. I mean, things happen, and you just saw Chip tap dance probably. So I think programs like this are fantastic. Like live video programs like this, I think are solid. And I just know from the back end that you guys have done a whole lot of coordination. So yeah, things like this I think are really great. The Arnie Sorensen, the Marriott situation too, is that I shared a second ago. I think of too as being really great. Like, you might not think of it as content, but it's crisis communications, so it's content through that lens. So anytime that we can get like a video like that, I think it's when it's important, when you're trying to really form that emotional connection, then I think it's important to think about video and live video.
Yeah. So speaking of another medium that we haven't touched yet is podcasting, and I've heard you on podcasts before. I don't think you have your own podcast.
I don't, no.
But I think it was Jason Swank who was on just a few weeks ago, and he said, hey, I mean, obviously his podcasts have been very successful, especially in the agency space. Mm-hmm. And, lots of people tune in kind of on a weekly basis to Jason's podcast, but he just kind of reminded me, it's one of the few mediums where people listen all the way through. And that's true to myself. When I listen to a podcast, I don't read every newsletter, I can tell you, but I definitely listen to every podcast. Mm. But do you have any thoughts on the medium broadly?
Not really. I mean, I don't think I have anything profound to say about that. I'm like you. I enjoy listening to podcasts. I have found that I listen to fewer of them these days because I'm just not on the road as much, and that's when I tended to listen to more of them. I'm a super nervous flyer, for example, and Meg Tripp, if she's still here, hey, Steve Garfield. Meg Tripp, if she's still here, she and I flew on one of the worst flights that I've ever taken, from Boston to Austin, Texas. It was like we barely got out of Boston because it was like super snowy, and it was terrifying for me. Meg thought it was like awesome, but for me it was terrifying. So all that to say, I tend to load up on podcasts, and I used to listen to a lot of podcasts on flights just to sort of get like, okay, just to not freak out every single time I'm in an airplane, which is, was a lot prior to March. So I'm not listening to them as much these days. I gotta say, I listen to the Marketing Profs, Marketing Smarts podcast, because it's ours. And aside from that, I listen mostly for like just for fun, like to like I love Dax Shepard's Armchair Expert. Do you ever listen to that?
I haven't heard that. I'm sure
Oh my gosh,
he's funny. Yeah.
But he's like so like he's literally an armchair expert, and just the stories that he pulls out. Like I just listened to one from the other day with Alicia Keys, and I love Alicia Keys. Like I love her music, but he pulled some stories out of her that I thought were just so, just really just so awesome to hear. So that's the kind of thing. Yeah, that last flight out because of Blizzard, Mega's saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
No, I love the medium. I love podcasts. I listen to a lot. I don't know if you've heard Malcolm Gladwell's podcasts. Those are also excellent.
Yeah, revisionist history. Yes. Yeah, I mean, I think this is the reason why I like newsletters, actually, is the same reason why I love podcasts, despite my own, habits being, slightly different than they were. I think any content program that grows an audience over time, that has that long-term brand building, goal, I think is key. And this goes back to the content marketing research that Marketing Profs and the Content Marketing Institute produced just last month. We found that this year, especially 81%. Oh, actually, I did a slide for this.
Nice.
80. There we go. 81% of brands are hoping to build trust with their audiences, right? And that's up from 68% just 2 years ago. So, to me, how do you build trust? It's showing up consistently over time and being relentlessly empathetic and always valuable to your audience. So I think anything that shows value over time, content is not just a one and done program, right? So anytime you can show it over time, I just think it's super, super critical. And it's really the way in the B2B space, especially with long sales cycles, where you've got to maintain that connection. I mean, focusing on building the brand over time is so critical. And so podcasts are a great solution to that. Newsletters that are good are a great solution to that. Video programs, live video, like that's why I love the acceleration series that you guys are doing, because it's not just one, and it's over time, right? Over many months. And so you're really building momentum. In content, in social media, I think momentum is so much more valuable than moments. And in my experience, so many brands focus on moments and don't focus on momentum. But momentum is what builds this trust. Like that's what we need right there.
Where is that stat from again, Ann?
This is from Marketing Profs content marketing, B2B content marketing research report. If you Google B2B content marketing Profs, you'll find it. We co-produced it with the Content Marketing Institute.
Yeah, excellent. So we may be on our final question, sadly, by the way, but because I'm having a good time talking to you. But
I know, this has been fun.
Yeah, your last comment there just made me thought about a question that came in from Amisha, because I think.
Oh, Amisha Gandhi, is that from her?
I don't see her last name. It might be, but okay. I think if you're not, maybe an executive, you're not going to call all the shots for your messaging, right? So what's the best way to convince executives to embrace altruistic messaging and being honest and being authentic? What kind of advice do you have for people out there that are trying to move their organization this way?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to come in and talk to them. Number one, that would be very effective. I just want to address actually one thing before I answer that too, is that Karen is asking, can you define momentum? What I mean by momentum is small moments over time. So in a content marketing construct, like we're talking about here, rather than just publishing a single blog post, right? You want to show up over time. And so taking a more of a holistic view of a content program and figuring out ways to tell that story slowly over time is so much more authentic than just producing it once. So the example that I gave was like, say Sharp Spring had just, they just had me and that was it. And that was their whole content plan. Like, that wouldn't be nearly as effective as having me and Amy Landino and Seth Godin and Carl Sakis and all of us like over time. So anyway, in terms of convincing your bosses, I mean, I'm kidding about bringing me in, although I'm happy just to do a call. So that would be one way. Another way is just to start something small. I think if your executives are afraid in some way, focus on on humanizing your content, making it more relatable to people. Again, I think, you know, things like this can help you make the case that if we need to be building trust with our audience, I would couple trust with affinity. So building trust so that people trust you, but also building affinity. Do people like you? I think that's also super important in B2B marketing. And again, why it's so valuable to show your face, turn the camera around. So I think just making your case from a, you know, showing the data about why it's important, and then starting somewhere small and focusing on being more personable, not personal. I find that executives freak out at personal, but they don't freak out at personable because they get it. You know, they want to be personable as well. The content that they interact with is personable, that they like the most. And so I think that's just a couple of ways that you can think about how to frame it for the executives in your company.
Yeah, that's great. I love the personable, not personal. Well, Ann, thank you so much. That was a super inspirational session for me. I'm sure it was for many of the other marketers and content producers out there. So
yeah, this was fun. And if I can be of any help to anybody here, just, you know, you can Google me at Ann Handley. You'll find me at annhandley.com. So thank you. And thank you, Chip, and everybody here. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Really appreciate it. We'll talk to you in a second offline too. But so if you're new to the series or you're just joining us on the live stream or Ann's live stream on her LinkedIn, please register for the next set of sessions. You can do that at sharpspring.com/acceleration. And a reminder, if you want to get a copy of Ann's book, you can contact us at a link we're also going to provide, and you can get a demo of SharpSpring. We'll be happy to send that to you. And just thanks again for joining us today. And thank you. Take care, everyone.